What is happening, everybody? Welcome to MLB Live Before Lock. Apologies for the couple-minute delay. There was some issues with things that I don't really understand, but something about YouTube connecting to the other thing, it doesn't matter. We're here now. We're sponsored by DraftKings Pick 6. If you guys want to check it out, I've got the man here to help guide you. Eric Lindquist. He is the he's the community expert when it comes to DraftKings Pick 6. I'm not available to play it. A lot of the guys here aren't. I'm jealous about it. I want to be able to play on Pick 6, but I can't. So I lean on Eric to help give us out some of the Pick 6 advice. If you guys are on DraftKings, which is going to apply to pretty much all of you here, go check out DraftKings Pick 6 if it is available in your state. And while you're here on the YouTube channel, like the video and subscribe. What's happening, Eric?
Not much. Just got done talking some betting for for like an hour and a half with Kyle Kerms. I know you were on the show on Wednesday as well, but a really fun live betting show talking through the ins and outs of the MLB slate, and then immediately changed gears. I had ran some stuff this morning. Things look pretty similar. Obviously, we've got some interesting lineups that we'll talk about, but I have some very strange exposures in the batting department. I'm curious what you think about one or two of these spots that I'm going to bring up. From a pitching perspective, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, my pitching exposure is pretty condensed, nothing all that crazy, but we'll be talking about offenses after we get through some of these pitchers. Good teaser for later, but let's start by talking about those pitchers, Eric. I'm going to make sure that I have the most recent set of ownership in front of me and that nothing has changed on that front. And we've got a handful of popular pitchers that are projected for over 20% ownership. And it's nothing you guys wouldn't be expecting. We don't have any kind of like weird, crazy goofballs that are cheap and in a good matchup, therefore they're popular. None of that nonsense. We've got Cole Ragans, Kevin Gausman, Tyler Glasnow, Nestor Cortez, Tanner Bybee. Those are all your pitchers that are projected for north of 20% ownership. Then you got some guys who are right around 10%, Pablo Lopez, Aaron Nola, Luis Castillo. And then beyond that, everything is contrarian. Where we're going to start here, Eric, is with the pay-up options, where we have Glasnow's 10,800, Tanner Houck is 9,600, Pablo Lopez 9,400, Bybee is 9,200, Max Fried 9,100. Who is your preferred pitcher to spend up for today?
Yeah, preferred one to spend up for is going to be Kevin Gausman in Seattle, just because of the strikeout rate. I am on the over of the game.
Spend up guys.
Spend up guys. So, okay.
9,000.
Oh yeah. Then Tyler Glasnow. He's sitting there with 24.8% ownership. It's really freaky. He's expensive. I love my boy Pablo Lopez. Houston's been hitting better. It's interesting from a DFS perspective today because you have a lot of really good pitchers in really tough spots for different reasons. Tyler Glasnow is yet another one of them. Milwaukee, for whatever reason, continues to just annihilate righties. 114 WRC plus on the season, fifth best mark in baseball, sitting with a 147 ISO though, so the power hasn't been as crazy. But Tyler Glasnow, he give a little bit of that up here, but with the strikeout stuff, there's a reason that he is the most expensive pitcher on the slate. He's got that ridiculous pedigree, 33.9% K rate. It's gotten better in the power department, 8.5% barrel percentage, but it's more of just the ownership is kind of there on all these other pieces as we get further down the line. Obviously, the 8K guys that I jumped the gun on, but Glasnow, although he's 10.8, $1,200 more than Tanner Houck, $1,400 more than Pablo Lopez, and then Tanner Bybee, who looks pretty good against San Francisco, but I'm sitting right at around the field on him. Tyler Glasnow in 28% of my lineups.
Yeah, so for me, the answer is pretty clearly Tanner Bybee in this price range. If you look at guys like Gausman, and it's not that there's anything wrong with Gausman, he's just so much more expensive than every other pitcher on the slate. There's a $12,000 price gap between Tyler Glasnow and Tanner Houck, who's the second most expensive pitcher, and nobody's playing Houck, which I think is totally reasonable. Some weather concerns there, which is the least of his issues. He's also going up against the New York Yankees. But to me, it's really Tyler Glasnow is $10,800. That is $1,600 more than Tanner Bybee. And he's got a more difficult matchup. He's pitching against the Milwaukee Brewers, whereas Bybee's going up against the San Francisco Giants, and Bybee's less owned. So we've got less ownership to Bybee, a much cheaper price point, and then on top of that as well, the easier matchup. So Tanner Bybee's the one for me. Obviously, there's upside in Tyler Glasnow, but I'm not really where you're at there because I only have 14% of them. So I'll be underweight to the field on Glasnow, paying up for some of these other pitchers. And then we talk about the 8K range. Those are the guys I really, really like in the 8K range. But if I'm paying up, Tanner Bybee is the one guy here that I am overweight to in a meaningful way, with him being in north of 20% of my lineups. And none of the contrarian guys standing out to me. I assume that's the same for yourself.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. Weather in New York at the moment, that's a tough one to get on board with Mr. Tanner Houck. Pablo Lopez, Houston's been red hot. I do have a little bit of him, but I'm not going to get to double-digit percentage, although we have to expect positive regression on his ERA. I mean, just a huge discrepancy that we're looking at there, but I'm giving some respect to Houston, top of that lineup.
And talking about the weather, because I saw a couple people bring it up in chat. We had a game that had some weather concerns yesterday and ultimately ended up being one that you absolutely needed. You needed Bailey Ober. You needed the Twins offense. And that's not even just in terms of what the results were. Even if you reviewed the slate in the post-contest sims, it was still like, yeah, you wanted to play Bailey Ober and you wanted to play the Twins offense, just to have lineups that were projected to be plus EV for the day. And that's something that I've seen pretty frequently as of late, is that a lot of times some of these spots that have questionable weather, they're still ones you ultimately want to end up targeting. And I'm also not all that concerned about the weather. That is assuming it's a good spot. Like, I don't think you just want to be playing people in bad spots because of there being bad weather where the ownership is lower. But I'm letting the Yankees Red Sox game just in my player pool, not making any changes to the contest generator or the sims, and just playing it as it pops up. What are you doing with the weather in New York?
I currently have none of the pitchers. I have the hitters in.
Let's see. So for
I'm
me,
not playing
I
Nestor
have,
Cortez.
when we talk about some of these cheaper pitchers here, I have some exposure to Nestor Cortez. Not that he's like a core play for me or anything, but he is in 18% of my lineups. He is amongst a group of popular pitchers in the 8K range. Aaron Nola's 14% owned, Luis Castillo 10%, Cortez 24%. We went over this before, but this is really where the chalk is on this slate. Kevin Gausman, Cole Ragans, these are the two most popular pitchers on this slate. Then Nestor Cortez 24% owned. I just already kind of revealed my hand a little bit by saying I have 18% of Nestor Cortez, so I'm coming in slightly underweight to the field on him. Kevin Gausman, Cole Ragans, what do you make of them as the two most popular pitchers of the day?
It makes sense to me. I'm freaked out for both of them. Kevin Gausman, the splitter's been good, but it hasn't been as good as what it's been in years past. The expected batting average up on it, batting average. We can expect some negative regression for Kevin Gausman. Again, just he's got some mileage on the tires, if you will. Cole Ragans going up against Colorado. This is just your standard. Like, Colorado's been striking out a lot against lefties and righties alike. You look at the lefty numbers here specifically. They are down at the sub 90 WRC plus against 88 WRC plus. Do have a 164 ISO, but a 24.6% K rate. I am going to be playing some Colorado bats going up against him, but there's no doubt that, yes, it's his first time going into Coors Field, but he's still been really, really good. It all depends on how this changeup plays at altitude. Changeups generally have lower RPMs. They're not going to spin as much anyway. I don't know how this is going to play in altitude. You don't really know until it shows up and you can look at the data on it. But Cole Ragans, he's the highest owned pitcher for a reason. It's the matchup. It has nothing to do with ballpark, because 5.2 opposition total up against, it has everything to do with the strikeouts. But I prefer Kevin Gausman at reduced ownership by 4%. It's pretty nominal. And this could be one of those things where Gausman does end up 36% and Ragans ends up 28%. It wouldn't shock me whatsoever. But I like the Kevin Gausman spot just because the Seattle lineup, you get the highest strikeout rate in baseball up there. You get the best pitching ballpark in baseball over a 3-year rolling average. And I just like the way that my lineups look with him a little bit more. I'm going to have some Cole Ragans. I know it's only $100 difference between the two, but just looking at that 5.2 opposition total that we have in the top pitchers tool, every time I stare at it, it just it tempers my expectations for Mr. Cole Ragans.
Yeah, I have a little bit more of Kevin Gausman, but I've got 40% of Ragans. I've got 42% of Kevin Gausman. So if I had to tell you guys which one do I prefer, I would say slightly Kevin Gausman. I do think these are the two best overall pitchers on the slate. And there's another thing that's driving the ownership to Ragans, Eric, beyond just the fact that he is pitching against the Colorado Rockies. He's also been discounted crazy amount, like $2,000 price discount, because he's pitching in Coors Field, which I actually think overcompensates for some of the park factors there. If he was $9,500, something like that, I think it would be a different decision points that we're making, but he's not. He's too cheap. That makes him look good. As far as Kevin Gausman goes, he hasn't pitched all that well this year. 4.75 ERA, 5.42 expected ERA. It's the worst he's been in forever. Have you looked at the matchups he's had, though?
Yes.
They've been brutal, which it's always kind of hard to just look at some of the numbers like his expected ERA, his FIP, his strikeout rate, all of that, and try to figure out what it would be if he was in easier matchups. But I mean, this guy just only gets the most difficult matchups possible in just about every single start. Here's his last 4 outings. Last time, Kevin Gausman pitches against the Yankees. The time before, against the Red Sox. Time before that, also against the Red Sox. He got Boston in back-to-back starts. Before that, Cleveland. Then he had a good matchup against the Oakland A's. What does he do against Oakland? 9 shutout innings, 10 strikeouts, 1 walk. Start before that, he pitches against the Baltimore Orioles. So I get the numbers aren't great this year, but just as a factor of pitching in the AL East, he's faced the Yankees, twice this year. He's faced Boston twice. His matchups that he's faced the Yankees 3 times, my bad. And then as far as the teams that he's faced in the National League, he's had to pitch against the Dodgers this year. So it's just been such a difficult strength of schedule. I think this is probably the most difficult strength of schedule any pitcher's had in baseball this year. It's not to excuse some of the bad performances Gausman's had, but I do think the numbers are a little bit overstated in terms of how poorly he's pitched. And this is a great spot for him against the Seattle Mariners. So I'm going to be on Gausman today, as is a lot of the field, but I'm overweight to him. I'm overweight to Ragans as well.
Yeah, Ragans, I get it. And again, it's DFS, it's different than betting, but like Cole Ragans, I have a lot of concerns about first time pitching at altitude, first time in Coors Field. A lot of pitchers have to endure that, but it has more to do with, what his specific pitch mix is. I don't know how it's necessarily going to play, but he's been so good. And as you said, discounted in such a dramatic way that it's not like fading an $8,200 Cole Ragans is a very good idea on any ballpark on planet Earth. He's going to generate swing and miss against just about anybody still. Colorado's about as bad as it gets. If it weren't for the ballpark, we would have no concerns and he'd be 1,000% owned. So it's Cole Ragans. You know what you're getting into with Coors Field. You just kind of deal with it. A lot of people have been dealing with it all season long. There's a reason for it. There's so much upside.
Yeah, and then I mentioned Nestor Cortez. I also get some exposure to him in this price range. With that said, he's expected to be fairly popular, so I am underweight to the field on him. Is there anybody else that's making their way into double-digit amount of your lineups or anything important to you from this 8K range?
Yeah, I like Luis Castillo up against Toronto. It has more to do with the ballpark. I think that there's some upside there as well. Aaron Nola, too, pulling quite a bit of ownership of nearly 15% against Atlanta. Atlanta's bats have just been awful. They've been a bottom 8 offense over the course of the last 30 days. Not sure what to make of it. And the hitting conditions in Atlanta this time of year are generally pretty good. No different again today. 87 here at first pitch, 88 degrees, wind slightly blowing out to left. But Aaron Nola is just a quality pitcher. I know it's a freaky spot, but if you're trying to get a little bit lower ownership in some of your stacks that you're looking at from the Kansas City side or other places on this slate, Aaron Nola is an okay way to use some salary. But Luis Castillo against Toronto in that ballpark here, you just have no lefties to be all that crazy concerned about in this lineup. You get Spencer Horowitz, who's been good, Dalton Varsho, and then Kevin Kiermaier, generally your 9-hole hitter. These are not very good lefties. And if Luis Castillo has his A stuff, which we just haven't seen in a long, long time, that'll be one thing. But considering he's got a 212 ISO and 207 expected ISO against lefties, if you can take that concern off the plate for him, I think Luis Castillo is somebody to have in double-digit ownership. He's an 18%. So he's actually the guy that I'm the most overweight to relative to the field in this price range.
Interesting. So what is, I don't know if you said it there. How much of him do you end up getting to then?
18%.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, he's not crazy popular or anything. So you're right around double the field there on Luis Castillo. And then you said none of the pitchers in Boston, New York. So just totally off Nestor Cortez.
I took him out entirely purely because look at it this way. Like maybe I'm going to get contest simmed after the fact for it, but if there's an in-game delay, which again, just feels like a random happenstance that I don't think can really be encapsulated in the data for it. Like we might see reduced ownership on the 25% of him. Maybe he ends up 15, 16% owned. But if there's an in-game delay, you're guaranteed that they're not going to be optimal, like guaranteed. And this game does have weather that's popping up all over the place for it. Looking at the radar, I think it's probably close to like a 35, 40% chance, but I basically am just taking the stance of like playing the rest of this price range, like getting to Ragans, Gausman, Castillo, Nola, and I'm just writing off Nestor Cortez. I'm just writing off Tanner Houck, which the field was already doing. And I'll play the bat still, where I think that they could still get back out on the field. It would be a pretty bad run out for this game to get flooded over and to have something pop up over the stadium and then have it end. But for me, it's Nestor Cortez against Boston. It's already a tough spot. It's a tough home ballpark for him. And I just have a lot of concerns with him where I don't really feel like tangoing with it. I mean, I look at the K prop for him, 5.5 at 6.5 over on pick six for today. I do have some lesses on that, especially because of the weather concerns. So if you're putting together your pick six cards, it locks in 19 minutes here for you. I think that's a pretty good short because if you get an in-game delay, which it's just going to cancel out anybody who doesn't have that under. That under is going to look really, really good, even against a Boston lineup here. You get Ref Snyder up there batting second, Tyler O'Neill batting third. We know he can strike out from time to time too. So that's not some unknown, but I'm more inclined to short the entire portfolio on him. I just don't want to deal with it whatsoever.
Got a super chat here from Melissa Harvey. Melissa says, shout out to Eric for the kick-ass Pick Six content. Melissa, thank you for the super chat. And Pick Six is the sponsor of our show. I know you did just briefly mention them, but is there anything else that you are eyeing for the Pick Six side of things, Eric?
Yeah, a couple of them. So less than 10.5 fantasy points for Aaron Judge. I'm sure everybody's running to the window to go fire that one up. But one of the things about betting, like or just I guess placing on something on projections, going more or less here, I think you got to keep in mind that this is the median outcome that we're looking at here. We haven't projected just north of 11 fantasy points, but that's a mean projection. That's going to average out. And Aaron Judge has a crazy long right tail. He can put up 30, 35 and bury anybody. But 10.5 fantasy points, pitcher starting to pitch around him. 10.5 fantasy points on the left side. Tanner Houck's pretty good. You have weather concerns. There might be like a 10% chance this game does get washed out. And the 10.5 fantasy points, I'm willing to go less on him. On the flip side, 9.5 fantasy points, I like the more on for Bobby Witt. Have those in some cards and some correlation that I have within that game that starts up here in 2 hours, 2 hours, 20 minutes until Coors Field tips off. But no, it's at a 5:10 Pacific, so 8:10 Eastern time. I like the Bobby Witt, Sal Perez. You can kind of get those correlation going up against an absolute gas can here in Kyle Freeland, even though I'm on the Colorado side of things there. Again, that has more to do with the price than it does anything else here. And then the best play of the day, you just can't go without it if you're playing two pick cards. I think you can just get different with anything else, is less than 3.5 strikeouts for Sean Dubin. He's going up against the Minnesota Twins. It's at 2.5 now across the industry. Strikeout props are just easier to project. There's something that routinely you can use a market-based approach on over at OddsShopper and find yourself to the top of the board there. It's now basically minus 110 both sides of 2.5, and you're getting 3.5. There's pitch count concerns we have for him. Minnesota doesn't strike out a ton against righties here. Short Dubin, 3.5 strikeouts, my favorite play on pick six.
You guys haven't done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, the easiest way to support our content. And also shout out to Malukar, who's supporting us. He gifted out 5 YouTube memberships. So Malukar, thank you. And hope you had a good 4th of July, Malukar. One of the good ones. Somebody who is always around in the YouTube chat, checking out all our shows, and always a good dude in the chat as well. So thank you, Malukar. We do appreciate that. If anybody is in Discord and has questions for us, at me during the show, and we could certainly check some of those out and answer them. Let's talk about the cheap pitchers, Eric. And we could group everybody who's sub 8K together because none of them are popular. The only pitcher that's really getting any kind of meaningful ownership, and it's not all that much, Reese Olson at $7,200 is 9% owned against the Cincinnati Reds. There's not a single other cheap pitcher that's over 3% owned, which makes sense. I don't really think there's a strong need to roster any of these guys, particularly when you consider that the guys that we are already considering the best pitchers on the slate are $8,200 and $8,300. Both of them popular, but not crazy. So 28% ownership to Gausman, 32% to Cole Ragans. So because those guys are underpriced and in good matchups against offenses that strike out a lot, aren't the most potent offenses either as of right now. I mean, the Mariners overall have been a good team this year, but they've been dog shit over the last month. Is there anybody really liking for cheap? Because the field isn't getting to anybody.
Yeah, I like Drew Thorpe going up against Miami. I'm going to take some shots on him. The guy has such a good changeup. It is valued as one of the better pitches in baseball from just a raw pitch perspective. Now, you got to set it up. You got to get other stuff in the zone there. And it is kind of questionable on if we're going to be able to get that. But he's only had a 14.9% K rate here in the early going. But it's been all of what, 1, 2, 3, 4 starts for him. He took on Colorado, which was a little bit disappointing there. He has Detroit, Arizona, Seattle. He's had a pretty good run of strikeout matchups, and it still hasn't shown up. But this is a great ballpark yet again. It is a great matchup yet again. He's got 4.5 as the number across the industry for it. And at 7K with zero ownership coming in on a 23-year-old who's had only 4 big league starts, he's throwing a changeup 36, 37% at the time. And as you go through individual hitters here for Miami, there's a lot of guys that aren't exactly, let's see, world beaters, if you will, throwing that changeup here. I'm going through just a number of them. Jazz Chisholm, sub 140 expected ISO against. Brian De La Cruz smashes them. Josh Bell, sub 150. Sub 200 for Jesus Sanchez, which is saying something when he's got a 237 expected ISO against. The changeup's just been a tough pitch for them, and actually any pitch has been tough for the Miami Marlins. So, I mean, it's more to do with the matchup in the ballpark, but you can't say no for me at 7K for Drew Thorpe. If I have a pitch that's grading out that well for me, I have him in 8% of my lineup. So I'm making a case for a guy at 1%.
Yeah, I don't have anybody. There are none of these cheap guys that end up in my lineups. You know, like some of them are in like a lineup or two. So, I mean, you brought up Drew Thorpe. I have him in 1 out of 150 lineups. I have Hogan Harris in 2 out of 150 lineups. I've got Slade Ciccone in 2 out of 150 lineups. So nothing that's notable for me. It's just guys who it's like, hey, this is whose salary fits in lineups that are run through the contest generator in the Sims. There's nobody I really want to be backing. The only one that's picking up any kind of ownership, like I mentioned before, is Reese Olson. Have him in a couple lineups as well. He's been super hit or miss and has been a really high variance pitcher. But beyond that, I think where you really want to be building your lineups, pay up a little bit for guys like Bybee or Tyler Glass now. But really, I think the best pitching options by a mile are in that 8K range. That's where a lot of my lineups are being built. Anything else you want to point out when it comes to the DraftKings pitchers?
No, I'm just making a case for one guy that I don't even have in double-digit ownership of my lineups. You don't want to play Dubin whatsoever. Again, the pitch count concerns. Hoeing, you can't play pitch count and will not pitch beyond like an inning or two in that one. Spencer Bivens, he's opening. I can't really make a case going there. Albert Suarez was the one guy I stared at for a little bit, but just ran it through the Sims and wasn't getting any. So I'm not going to force or go through to boost to get Albert Suarez. There's just so much strikeout upside. When you're talking about 6.5s and 7.5s in the marketplace for all of these pitchers up top that are pulling ownership, it's really hard to say no to them because it would take a large outlier performance for one of those other guys like a Drew Thorpe. I do think he'll have a game eventually where he finds 7, 8 strikeouts and it'll just be against a poor team like this. So for me, that's the one guy I can really make a case for. But yeah, you're going to be sitting in this 8K range. And then for me, I'm getting to more Glass now than Greg is, but that's more of like a calculated decision because of what I'm getting to from a bat perspective.
We did get news that the game in Cleveland is going to start in a rain delay. Not massively concerning to me. I've got the weather pulled up right here. It looks like it's going to rain and not heavy rain, but light rain for the next 45 minutes, hour or so in Cleveland. And then it's fine for the rest of the night. So should be one that late start and they play, no issues. Not anything I'm going to be changing my lineups for or anything like that. And let's see if there's any updates to the New York weather. Let's see. I got a little bit of drizzles outside here, but yeah, more or less the same. Looks like somewhere around a 30% chance of rain tonight.
Sounds about right.
All right, let's talk about the FanDuel pitchers here and see if there's anything that really notably stands out as being different on the FanDuel side of things as far as pitchers that we like. The ownership is very spread out over on FanDuel relative to DraftKings. The most popular pitcher over on FanDuel, it is Kevin Gausman at 17% ownership. Cortez 15% owned. Bybee 13% owned. Ragans is 12% owned. Glasnow is 11% owned. Here's what's really different about Cole Ragans on FanDuel as compared to DraftKings and where I kind of do like the pricing better on FanDuel. Ragans is 10,400 in Coors Field. That's like a real decision point that you have to make over there. For yourself, Eric, If you're playing one GPP lineup on FanDuel, who's the pitcher you'd be going to?
I have one, and it is Tyler Glass now. I'm just going to the guy with the most strikeout upside. It is a tough spot against Milwaukee, but I repeat, it's kind of a tough spot for everybody to some extent. Like Kevin Gausman, it's tough because of how he's been pitching more so, but otherwise the matchup from a strikeout perspective, right around the 100 WRC plus we've seen for Seattle all season long, like he can get hit up from time to time, but I think you're going to get strikeouts if you're Kevin Gausman most situations. He's just pulling a lot of ownership. He could pull up a little bit more ownership. I just like getting to the 11-2 number because there's one stack in particular that on FanDuel I'm definitely going to be playing here as well. Yeah, I think that for one GPP lineup, I just go to the tippy top.
Yeah, for me, that is going to be Kevin Gausman. There's not really like a crazy ownership concern. I know he's the most popular, but it's 17%. So it's not like some kind of crazy high mark. He's $9,000. So you got him at $2,200 cheaper than Glass, now $1,400 cheaper than Cole Ragans. And also the way that FanDuel has been pricing some of the batters as of late in the top offenses, the top hitters have been really expensive. Same with some of the pitchers that we've seen as well. So FanDuel is slowly becoming a little bit more price sensitive for MLB. And that's where Kevin Gausman at that 9K price point on the road in Seattle, that's a spot that I like getting to. Is there anybody else on FanDuel that stands out to you as being a better pitching option they were on DraftKings?
Better pitching option than on DraftKings. Luis Castillo's 9,100 and pulling 5.8% ownership. Somebody that, going 6 innings in that ballpark, a little bit more inclined to back him there. I don't have zero. I talked about him over on DK as well. Working through it. Obviously the Ragans difference is dramatic there. 10-4 for him. Probably would be, it's more that I have guys that I'd be gearing away from than like I have some crazy hard stance for. I do think it's a little bit appealing to try to fire up like a Max Fried at 9,700 at 2-3% ownership, purely because going 6 innings can be so valuable there. You have just the back half of the lineup that looks so brutal every single time out without Bryce Harper, without Kyle Schwarber in there. They can stack up more righties, but that doesn't make the righties good. Max Fried, somebody that I think kind of stands out if I were playing more than one lineup. Yeah, that kind of does it for me. It's more that I'd be off of some of the Nestor Cortez ownership. I'd be off of some of the Tanner Bybee at 9,800 relative to like Kevin Gausman being 9K. I'd be pretty concentrated on Gausman. I am playing Glass now. I probably would be up on Luis Castillo at 6% as well.
Yep, and we had the question came in Discord. Justin wanted to know who our favorite pitcher was for a single entry GPP on FanDuel. And yeah, that was Gausman for myself, Tyler Glass now for Eric. And then beyond that, pitchers, kind of the same analysis on FanDuel as it is for DraftKings. Any final thoughts on pitchers, Eric? If not, we'll have Mike build some lineups in the lineup generator and we'll see what shows up.
Yeah, again, the lineup generator, the Sims tool, let it do some of the work for you. If you're just letting it run unencumbered, not adding any issues to it, you should be getting to just south of around 50-55% Gausman and Cole Ragans, and that's just fine with me today.
Let's see what the lineup generator has to say. Eric, you want to build balanced, contrarian, chalky lineups today?
Let's go to the middle again. I kind of like the lineups that the balanced have turned out the last couple of days, and I think there's one expensive team that I really, really like. There's no way we'll get to it even if we go contrarian. There's one really, really cheap stack that I also like, and they're both in the same game, which is ironic.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, we'll start with DraftKings here, Mike. Start with DK. All stack types, and then we'll go balanced. I like how I always take note of this. Mike and Jordan have very specific ways to click on stuff. Mike makes a big circle before he could click on anything. He's like a vulture swooping in on his prey before clicking the buttons in the lineup generator. Yeah, save Great. 20 of those guys, and then we'll go check out and see what the exposures look like.
Let's do it.
Let's see. Gamble God is saying
a lot
Paul
of Detroit
Skeens,
and White
obvious.
Sox. Good
He's
Lord.
not on the slate. Paul Skeens ain't on the slate. I'm sure we would like him if he was. I think every single time Paul Skeens has been on the main slate, he's been like 50 to 60% owned the last month, and he's always been somebody who has landed in my lineups. But for today, he's not on the slate, so nothing to really talk about there. What was that, Mike?
7 of the top 9 are Tigers.
Yeah, lots of Tigers. I think this is very clearly a team that makes sense if you need to save salary in any kind of way. The Tigers are also very, very popular, and it's really a price point thing more than anything else. Pretty solid matchup for them as well against Carson Spears. But yeah, if I'm looking to save money at offense, the Tigers definitely a spot to be getting to. And it looks like a lot of Bobby Witt Jr. is also going to be crazy popular today. Other hitters, yeah, mostly Tigers towards the top, and then Bobby Witt Jr. As far as pitchers, there's Gausman, there's Cole Ragans as well. Not anything different than what Eric and I were talking about with our pitcher exposure before. Tanner Bybee, another one, makes sense. Tyler Glass now also makes sense. A little bit underweight to the field to him, but not significantly. A little bit overweight to Pablo Lopez. I don't have that much of Pablo Lopez. Do you, Eric?
I have him in 16% of lineups.
Yeah, so about even with the field there. Go to the stack exposure.
Guess there's one guy we didn't talk about. Reese Olson's coming up for me a little bit too, going up against Cincinnati. It's a freaky ballpark. It's just what it is. But Reese Olson, I forgot to bring up. I have double digit of him too at 10%.
Yeah, like if I had to pick one pitcher sub 8K to roster, it is Reese Olson, but none of them are real priorities for me at all.
No.
Yeah, stacks. We basically only got to Tigers and Royals stacks. Those are the two most popular offenses on the slate. So I'm going to ask you, Eric, relative to ownership, what are you doing with the Royals and the Tigers? Both of them projected for about 12% ownership. And then there's not a single other popular offense on the entire slate. A little bit of ownership going to the Chicago White Sox, but nothing crazy for them against Brian Hoeing. They are, 7.7% owned. So you've only got two popular offenses on the entire slate, Royals, Tigers. If you're picking one of these chalk offenses, which one is your preference?
Royals are my preference over the Tigers. I mean, you just go through the individual batters here for the Tigers. Going up against Carson Spears, he's been pretty good so far this season. Will that continue? I don't know, but 5% barrel percentage, nifty. Sub 5% walk rate coming off of last season. We saw him for like a hot second for a cup of coffee, had an 11% walk rate. 3.33 expected ERA. I'm a little surprised that people are running to the window there, whereas you get Kyle Freeland, who is an absolute it's Coors Field too. I mean, for me, I don't see how you would look at, if I had to choose between the two. Obviously, ownership is still a thing, but Kansas City, they're still pretty easy to put together stacks where I'm pretty interested going their direction. We do have a pretty high stack score on Detroit as it stands right now, which I'm very surprised of. It speaks to decent enough hitting, whether it's blowing out in a small ballpark, 80 degrees. But I do think you just, on the surface, see Colt Keith, Riley Green, Parker Meadows back here with the Detroit team. Outside of those guys, I don't know. Carson Spears has done pretty well against righties so far.
The thing that makes it hard for me to get away from the Tigers is just how cheap they are. This team is so insanely cheap. They have, I think I feel like I've said this a few times over the course of the last couple of weeks, but for a full slate, for a team to have a 25% chance to be the top value stack on the slate, it's something that really doesn't come around all that often. And it's the entire team. Pulling up all the salaries here, you could basically stack this team with whatever you want anywhere else, because you got Riley Green is $5,100. The next most expensive hitter is Matt Vierling at $4,200. Then you got Wenzel Perez at $3,600. Nobody else is more expensive than $3,000. So you really could take the top 5 hitters in the Tigers lineup and combine with whatever the hell else you want. That's what makes them appealing.
Interesting. Yeah, for me, I am getting to a lot of Oakland Athletics as my value stack.
Ooh, the Oakland Athletics. We'll talk more about some of the other teams in a second here. But yeah, at least as far as the lineup generator goes, it was primarily, actually really only getting to the Royals as well as the Tigers. And I do think those are very worthy core stacks. If I'm looking at my most stacked teams, those are 2 of my 4 teams that I'm getting the most exposure to. But in single entry, Eric, who is it that you'd be looking to get to in a single entry lineup?
Well, I hope people get freaked out from Cleveland. Cleveland's been one of the best hitters parks in baseball. They get this weird opener. Spencer Bevin's going to eat up some more innings there too. But like Naylor and Stephen Kwan, these guys have been good against lefties all season long. Naylor, it's a new thing for him this season. Kwan, he's just good against most people as far as getting on base and finding ways to do it differently. And now adding power to the portfolio. And part of that is Progressive Field, moving these banners, getting that win funnel, whatever is happening there. But I look at Cleveland there, 6.7% top stack percentage. I really like them considering they're the third highest top stack percentage, sub 6% ownership share. I know who I want to be getting to in that lineup. I thought about Colorado against Ragans for single entry, but ended up going with Cleveland.
Yeah, this was not a team I expected to be on, and it was certainly not one when I was doing my content this morning. But as I was building lineups and the Tampa Bay Rays really started to stand out to me, Michael Lorenzen. I know somebody who you have been friendly. You posted a picture of yourself with him not all that long ago at a baseball game, so I know he's
best
a buddy
hitting
of
pitcher
yours.
in baseball.
As we know, the proclaimed best hitting pitcher in all of baseball, slightly
Ohtani's not pitching
slightly
this
ahead
year
of Shohei Ohtani per Eric's analysis. His underlying numbers are really bad this year. Really, really bad. And nobody's going to want to play the Tampa Bay Rays, I don't think, because Michael Lorenzen is a 3.4 ERA, but he's got a 4.91 expected ERA, a 5.07 FIP. He's not generating strikeouts, which isn't a surprise. He's never generated strikeouts, but even this is down for him. 17.6% strikeout rate compared to 19.4% for his career. And then you look at why is the ERA low for Michael Lorenzen? We've got a 226 BABIP. That's something that's not going to sustain. And then on top of that, he's got an 83.1% strand rate. This is a fraud of a pitcher. He's no good at all. He's just gotten very, very arguably the luckiest pitcher in all of baseball this year through 14 starts. It's 82 innings he's pitched, and I don't buy any of it. I think the Tampa Bay Rays, who have been a team that have hit the ball much better as of late than they did earlier in the season. Also, it's a team that has talent in their lineup. I think they should hit Michael Lorenzen more often than not, and it's not a popular team.
Look at you. I don't mind that whatsoever. I have 2% Tampa Bay stacks. I will go into the stack boost, and I will click this twice. It feels so nice. There we go.
If I was just playing the team that I have the most exposure to, then yeah, it would be the Detroit Tigers or the Kansas City Royals. But considering what their ownership is and what I think it's going to be in single entry, I had to look elsewhere. And the contrarian team I was getting the most of, Tampa Bay Rays for today. So that is going to be my single entry stack. Let's build some FanDuel lineups now, Mike, and then we'll talk about the rest of the stacks that we're getting exposure to and our home run picks as well. If you guys want to sign up for the lineup generator, links below in the YouTube description box. You want to sign up for any of the other tools at Stokastic.com. If you want to sign up for a data package, we got links in the YouTube description box. If you want to sign up for our Sims tool, there's a link down there as well. And any package you sign up for comes with access to our Discord channel, so you can ask us questions whenever you want over the course of the day. But pull this up here, Mike. Let's build some FanDuel lineups now. FanDuel. Let's go all stack types and balanced again. All right, save 20 of these and see what it is that we get to on FanDuel. All right. Once again, Tigers. Hey, there's some of the Guardians there, Eric. I'm seeing Jose Ramirez.
Let's go.
Andres Jimenez, I'm seeing there. I think that's Josh Naylor. A little hard to make out the names, but it looks like catcher first base. So I assume that's Josh Naylor. Andres Jimenez, David Fry, Stephen Kwan. So yeah, it looks like primarily Guardians as well as the Detroit Tigers here on FanDuel. Pitcher must be spread out because unless I'm missing somebody, it doesn't look like any pitchers are there at the top. Yeah, there's Gausman in around a quarter of our lineups, followed by Tanner Bybee, Cole Ragans down there, Nestor Cortez, Pablo Lopez. We have really spread out a pitcher on FanDuel, which makes sense. I mean, we were looking at the projected ownership before. There's not a single pitcher projected for north of 20% ownership. Most popular FanDuel pitcher, it's Gausman, projected for 17% ownership. So it does make sense that we would be getting to some spread out pitcher exposures in the lineup generator here as well. As far as the stacks there, Eric, Guardians, Tigers, those are the teams showing up the most. If you're building one lineup right now on FanDuel, say for single entry, who's the stack you'd be going to on FanDuel?
I went Cleveland and Oakland along with Glass. Now, two teams that kind of work pretty darn easily in the lineups. Yeah, I'm going to get to the more expensive pieces. Jose Ramirez, Josh Naylor, talked about them. Stephen Kwan. I just like getting to the lefties, even with this bullpen switchover. This Bivens character is not very good, it would appear to. I definitely just want to be stacking them up with nearly a 5.5 opposition total there in our top stacks tool. Really good stuff to be getting to their direction. I am, where did it go? Yeah, and then Oakland. Oakland's just making everything work for me over on DK. I also think if you're looking for like the super low owned stack that's going to win you a bajillion dollars, how is it not the Baltimore Orioles in a spot where you get them up against Hogan Harris? And when Baltimore's been incredible, absolutely incredible against righties. Now, against Southpaws, hasn't been as good, but they just haven't faced as many, and they still have a 122 WRC plus against, and you still get a ridiculous lineup here that isn't out yet, but you're going to get Henderson left on left. Otherwise, it's going to probably be 8 righties coming the rest of the way, unless they go Colton Cowser. I assume Austin Hayes in there as well. It's his birthday. Happy birthday, Austin Hayes. Jorge Mateo, James McCann, Jordan Westberg, Ryan Mountcastle, Santander, Adley Rushman better, more power from the right side. I mean, overall, I really like getting to that baseball game. Wind blowing out, that stadium is muted for it, but you don't get many first pitches above 70 degrees in Oakland, like ever. It should be a little bit warmer than normal. I think the Oakland Athletics, a team that the Sims tool is really showing out for me. I like getting to them on today's slate. And so for FanDuel, they're in my one lineup there. And on DK, it's the contrarian stack that I have a little bit more of.
Yeah, if I'm going with the contrarian stack on FanDuel, and we are about double the field on them right here in these lineups, the New York Yankees only projected for 2% ownership. It is very rare that you get the Yankees at 2% ownership, especially at home. And I know that Tanner Houck has pitched really well this year, and I do think he's going to be good going forward, but not this good. He does have the 2.67 ERA, but he's got the 3.68 expected ERA. And he has really started to struggle a little bit as of late, and I don't really think people have taken notice of it. His last start against the San Diego Padres, 4 1/3 innings. He ends up giving up 8 runs in that start. He'd only allowed 2 home runs the entire season. He gives up 3 in his last outing against the Padres. Before that, 6 2/3 innings against Toronto, gave up 3 runs. Before that, also against Toronto, 5 2/3 innings, gave up 2 runs. For that, against the Phillies, gave up 3 runs. These are some difficult matchups, but it's not like pitching against the Yankees is any easier. And you have a pitcher in Tanner Houck. He went the entire season, only 4 starts, having given up 3 runs. Now he's done it 4 starts in a row. Once again, I don't think that he's going to be bad or anything going forward, but I do think he's going to be most likely somewhere around a league average pitcher, which is what he's been for his entire career. So if we're going to be able to get the Yankees at basically no ownership, that's of interest to me.
That is of interest to people for the Yankees. Again, the Sims tool definitely popping some Yankees for you. That's for sure. I'm more inclined to play bats there. So Nestor Cortez, Tanner Houck, both of them out of the pool for me.
Let's talk about other stacks on the slate now. We've talked about single entry and some of the teams we have the most exposure to. Kansas City Royals, obviously, they stand out. I'm overweight to the field on them based on what you had said before. I assume same for you, Eric, overweight to the Royals?
Yes.
Yeah, so overweight to the Royals. It's a team that I don't have to sell you guys on. They're at Coors Field against Kyle Freeland. A lot of people are going to be playing the Royals. I'm playing them in large field tournaments. Going to be a little bit overweight to the field on them. Are there any other teams that are really important to your builds that you're getting a lot of? Not necessarily a contrarian stack, but a team we haven't mentioned yet that just makes up a good portion of your lineups.
Well, they're making up a good portion of my lineups, and they're contrarian. I think you got to play Colorado. Cole Ragans is the most popular pitcher on the slate, and yet there's north of a 5 implied run total coming in on him. They have 2% ownership share. 2% ownership share. We just saw Dallas Keuchel, who has definitely pitched in Coors Field before, who's not very good, by the way, but he did end up surviving that one going up against Colorado. Unfortunately, ended up jamming him in that spot, but like, Colorado should not have like 2% ownership here. I know Cole Ragans is really, really good, but it's his first start at Coors. It's the best hitting ballpark in baseball. And I'm getting a team that just nobody wants to play here. It's 80 degrees. You've got, a Royals team that I'm going to be playing here as well. If the game goes mega nuclear, I'm going to be pretty set because I have a 10% Rocky stacks, 11% Rocky stacks right now. And I don't see that changing. I just think it's a great leverage opportunity against the most popular pitcher on the slate.
Something that, I mean, you could always make a case for stacking a team that's against a popular pitcher in Coors. I don't have that much of the Rockies, but I do have a couple stacks of them. A side that I'm on the opposite end of than you, I'm getting to a chunk of Miami Marlins. They're in about 10% of my lineups. There are a lot of concerning things about Drew Thorpe's numbers.
Oh, for sure.
He didn't generate a ton of strikeouts in the minor leagues. And then also being a pitcher is really reliant on a changeup. We just haven't seen a lot of that really work out in the big leagues in the past. There have been some lefties like Mark Burley that it's worked out for, but not as much right-hand pitchers. He also doesn't throw all that hard, 91 miles per hour. His results so far are 4.43 ERA, 4.23 expected ERA. But it's really just his inability to get swing and misses that's kind of eye-popping for me. It also carries over to something that was an issue for him this year in Double-A, but a 14.9% strikeout rate. Well, he's also struggled to throw strikes, 13.8%. I think what probably happened here is he probably had a lot easier of a time throwing changeups in the dirt in the minor leagues that hitters chase. That isn't happening as much at the major league level. But for a pitcher who's not generating strikeouts, he's walking a bunch of guys, isn't somebody who has overwhelmingly great stuff to be able to get out of some tough situations when he has it, because he's just really a one-pitch pitcher and it's a changeup. I'm not saying that Drew Thorpe can't be good. I'm just kind of not sold on him. And I mean, the field isn't playing him either. So I get getting to exposure to him at 1% ownership. But I think the Marlins, if you're looking to save salary and get away from the Detroit Tigers, I think the Marlins are a reasonable team to go to.
Yeah, two hitters I have nearly 10% of. I've got 6 and 7% respectively. Brian De La Cruz, Jesus Sanchez. I don't really want anybody else. There's nobody else in this lineup who hits changeups well. 141 expected ISO, I guess, for Jazz Chisholm, so shout out him. But Myers, Jake Berger, this Edwards character, Brujan, Rivera, went through all their changeup numbers, and nobody had anything. Nick Fortes is just horrendous, absolutely horrendous. I mean, these guys are awful. It's the Miami Marlins. But as you said, the walk rate is up there, 13.8%. I'm not going to talk you off of going up against somebody that has definitely had issues getting the swing and miss it the same way at the big league level. For me, I'm just on the opposite side where I'm trying to create some leverage with the pitching, where I could get to some cheaper bats. I can get to some Orioles, which I like as a contrarian stack. I can get to Kansas City, an expensive stack that everybody's on, but you got to find different ways of differentiating those lineups where I think Thorpe can help out with that. I'm not going to sit here and defend Thorpe to some pulp or anything, but I definitely understand why you're getting to Miami. I just want to point out the only two lefties that I see that are doing anything against a changeup are De La Cruz and Sanchez.
Yeah, I think we got a pretty reasonable question in the YouTube chat. Sean V had asked us, why is it that people are playing the Detroit Tigers? He said, Spears is good. I'm not sure that he is good. He's pitched well at the major league level this year, but it's only been 8 appearances, 3 starts. So he split time between being a reliever and a starter. He was a not good pitcher in the minor leagues. There's a reason why he didn't get called up until now. He pitched okay in the minor leagues this year, but also his 46 innings. If you look at previous years, last year in Double-A, he had a 3.69 ERA, a 3.7 FIP. In 2022 in Triple-A, he had a 7.41 ERA, a 5.1 FIP. In Double-A in 2022, he had a 4.99 ERA and a 6.19 FIP. And basically every projection model says this is a guy who, as a starter, should have a 5-ish ERA. So he's somebody who, yes, he has pitched well so far in the big leagues, but it's such a small sample size that a lot of projection models see his minor league numbers and how much he struggled in the minor leagues as being more relevant than the 3 starts that he's made so far this year. But who knows? Maybe he's figured something out, but I prefer to be on the Tigers side.
I am not with you, I don't think. I'm probably going to stay where I am with, I'm pretty darn underweight to Detroit.
I am a little bit underweight to them as well. I'm just more answering Sean's question. Why are people playing them at all?
Again,
and those are the
and that's
also,
a great
the Tigers,
point.
like I said, they're dirt cheap. It's just such a crazy cheap price that we have there. Anything else that's important to you as far as stacks go?
I mean, we're still waiting on some stacks, and I think that that's always appealing. I'm probably not looking to get to Brewers. I probably am looking to get to a little bit of Toronto Blue Jays, and I'm definitely looking to get to the Baltimore Orioles. So I'll be paying attention to those stacks as they roll out. We got the news guy keeping people apprised of what's coming out here. But on a 12-game slate, I do really like this Orioles spot with that wind blowing out ever so slightly in Oakland. Not something that does a crazy amount of park factor difference for me, but what does is just looking how good this freaking lineup is. They've set it up in a way where they can roll out the A team every single time against both hands now, calling up some lefties. They've had the righties there for a while, got the switch hitter in Santander, Mr. Ryan Mountcastle, probably the only big bopper that won't be in there. I guess O'Hearn and Kierstead won't be in it, but maybe they go back half of the lineup there for it. For Yeah, no, probably Cedric Mullins. If I had to guess just for defensive purposes, he probably ends up being the 9-hole hitter, but I'm going to be paying attention to that Baltimore stack for sure.
All right. If you guys haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and let us know you're picking at a home run today, because it's time for Eric and I's dong picks for the night. If anybody does have any final questions, hit us up about it. But it looks like we've pretty much answered all the questions people have with just a few minutes left to go here. Eric, are you picking to go yard today? No Coors Field. That's cheating. But anything else is in play?
Yeah, I'm just going to go back to the ball game here. Over 70 degrees in Oakland. Weird that this is like a stand that I'm making and something that I actually want in my lineups in a pretty considerable amount. I want both sides of it, but everybody has like north of plus 500 to hit a homer. But one guy who should probably never be plus 500 to hit a home run is Gunnar Henderson. I don't care that it's left on left. I don't really mind whatsoever here. It's freaking Gunnar Henderson. He's only at a 120 expected ISO. He has a 258 ISO, though, against them for the season. This just has more to do with Hogan Harris. A 131 expected ISO, 194 actual ISO. It's been more towards the righty side, but how you get Gunnar Henderson at plus 500 in any ballpark where the wind is blowing out slightly and it's not like, you know, a hurricane coming in. This is just amazing, amazing value. From a DFS perspective, nobody's going to own him. One of the highest upside hitter players in baseball every single night. Give me Gunnar Henderson.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Brandon Lau. Already mentioned before that a team that I like being overweight to the field to and that I'm playing in single entry. It is the Tampa Bay Rays. I know that we do have Michael Lorenzen, who's actually been a reverse splits pitcher this year. He's allowing a 381 WOBA to righties, 227 to lefties. But still, Brandon Lau is the individual hitter that I'm getting the most of from the Rays. I'm overweight to everybody in the lineup. Everybody's pretty low owned. But Brandon Lau, if Michael Lorenzen is going to get hit, it probably means that we're going to see the bullpen of the Rangers early, and that would also be pretty good there for Brandon Lau. So give me Lau to homer. I could have gone with a number of Tampa Bay hitters, but he is the one that I am settling on there. Let's see what we have from chat. Home run picks from the YouTubes. We have, let's scroll up here. Freddie Freeman from Sotex, Jackson Merrill from Dahmer707. We've got, who's Top Gun? Francisco Rubio's going Top Gun. Whose nickname is that I don't know of?
I have no clue.
Is there a player named Maverick?
I don't know. We got a weird Toronto lineup. No George Springer out there, but you do get Bo Bichette. That's so weird that that's how it panned out.
All right. Well, George Springer, that was the home run pick of Ricardo Nelson, and he's not starting now.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
Christian Walker from Father Time, Anthony Santander from Larry C, Adley Rutschman from Malukar, JB Hughes is going with Jose Ramirez, Pierre has got Corey Seager, and then we've got Kyle Gentry is saying that he likes the Gunner call as well. Jordan Westberg's the pick from Aaron Hines. Casey Leatherwood is going with Ryan Mountcastle as well as Isaac Paredes. Ellie De La Cruz from JB Hughes. Riley Green also from JB Hughes. Cal Rayleigh from Robert Grease. And then we got Austin Riley from Michael Kennedy. We've got Castro from Andy Melman. Gunnar Henderson from Francisco Rubio. Gunnar Henderson from Malukar. Ellie De La Cruz from AJ Verse. Then we've got Almost Made is going with Anthony Volpe. The Running Man is going with Turner. Brandon Lau as well from Taco. And then Trip says Perez. Which Perez? I'm trying to think which Perez's are on the slate. Either Salvador or Wenzel. You get credit for both of them if either of them homer. How about that? And then Mike Campbell is going with a Jordan Klein special pick, Shohei Ohtani. Guys, thank you very much for watching. If you have not done yet, one more time, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Shout out to DraftKings Pick 6 for sponsoring the show. Hope you guys have a great weekend. See you back here on Monday.